can I discern who is truly a safe space when even good people mess up?
That's a good question. Is how do we identify safe spaces? I'll go from personal experience. One of the things I trusted a few people that I should not have. One of the things I remember about a space that was not safe was that this person was very comfortable talking to me about what was wrong with other people. That this person was very comfortable talking to me about other people's business, and I assumed that because I am who I am, or because we have this relationship, that would not be how this person would treat me when I wasn't around. And I think I had to learn that if you demonstrate that behavior, that this is how you navigate other relationships, then I should also be concerned about how you're going to navigate our relationships. So one, how do you know it's a safe space? I would say we should do a lot of watching before trusting. I want to watch, how do you interact with other people who matter to you, and how do you interact in our conversation? So if you're telling me something personal about somebody and I don't know that they gave you permission to tell me that, I should probably be cautious about how much of myself I'm going to give to you, number one. I think the same goes for asking people why. And I think somebody who has proper motives won't shy away from a why question. Anybody who gets defensive about giving clarity reveals that they have a hidden motive. Anybody who gets mad that you have asked for clarity so that you can provide trust, it reveals that in that defense, I'm saying, well, why do I have to explain myself? Why do I have to? Anybody who's secure in their motives would just be clear about the motives. Anytime you say, hey, I want to know what is the label in this relationship, and somebody gets defensive and say, I don't know why we need a label. Okay, well, do you have one or do you not have one? Or, hey, when you asked me that, what was behind it? Well, I don't know, I just felt like asking. Okay, well, if you're defensive, then that might tell me that you're not secure in your presence and in your motives for being here. Somebody might be like, Princeton, here's this question. I would say, okay, I hear you. What made you ask that? And then if they come back and are like, hey, you know what? I asked that because I remember in our last conversation you said this and it made me think this, so I just wanted to follow up. Okay, bet, fantastic. But anytime somebody gets defensive when you start to ask for a motive, it might mean that their motives are not pure. So one, I would say check how they navigate other spaces. Two, do not be afraid to ask the question. Three, trust is measured or rationed out. I believe that love is sort of a general principle, that everyone, if your blood is red, deserves love. But I believe that trust is by virtue of experience. And so that means that trust is sort of rationed and rewarded. Like you get this much based on our onset, and then you are rewarded with more trust based on what you do with this present trust. And I think sometimes we give a bucket of all trust, and then that trust is broken, and that's why the hurt is so big, because you betrayed the trust of my biggest secret or the trust of my biggest. And what I've learned to do in relationships is, I'm gonna give you a little bit that you can handle at this moment. Let me tell you a secret that maybe I've told 5 or 6 other people so that I can just see how you navigate that. And it's not petty, it's not a test, it is me engaging in wisdom. Like, let me see what you do with the small parts of my heart before I give you the whole heart. And so I've learned to do that. That trust is garnered by experience. It's garnered by watching how you demonstrate what you've done with the trust that I've given. I think another thing that reveals a safe space, which would be my last thing, is how much does the person disclose about themselves? How much equal stake in hurt do we have as a means of this relationship? And this is something that a friend of mine, I remember asking him, Mike Smith, who I love to this day. I was going into USC. He had directed the gospel choir before me, and I was about to become the director. And I said, Mike, how do I know who I can trust? Like, it's very hard when you're a leader. I've been in ministry my whole life. And he said this. He said, the person you trust will always give of themselves at the same rate that they are asking you to give of yourself. I was like, So somebody who can sit and listen to you all day and you done poured out your whole heart, and at the end of that conversation, you don't know nothing about them. Not one secret, not one tear, not one mistake they've made. Then that means that should betrayal happen, one of us has more to lose than the other one. And so I've had to learn that I take inventory of how much are we both sharing. If you know my whole story of my childhood and I don't know yours, or if I share with you a failure, but you didn't also share a failure. And it's not tit for tat or record keeping. What it is it's measuring reciprocity. Because that means that if we have both been vulnerable, then we both have something to lose at the betrayal of that vulnerability. When one person has overgiven or overshared and the other person is just pretending, and you got to watch, because sometimes people do the manipulative thing of just being like, I just want to be there for you. I've learned to be iffy about that, because true relationship is a give and take. You also got to be careful about people who can be there for you but can't also receive. That might be a mask. That might be their way of holding up that they're not ready. They love your business, but they're not ready to also come to the table vulnerable to exchange. So if somebody only lets you be in the vulnerable spot, but doesn't also exchange vulnerability, that's a sign that it's not a safe space. And I've had to learn that for real. There have been some people who I straight up was like, this is not it. I'll say the last thing, be careful of people who equate being there for you with now some sort of expectation that you do something. So I've learned this too, both in other people and in myself. You've got to watch somebody who is there for you and they also trying to flirt, or they're being there for you and they're also trying to use that as a means to secure your giftings, right? Like, I was there for you, now can you pay my bill this month? Or I was there for you, now can you, no. Let's have equal share. If we invested vulnerability, then let's exchange vulnerability. If we exchanged money, let's do that. Let's begin to be a little wiser about what we're giving, because sometimes we're exchanging emotional for tangible. And then when betrayal happens, one person has more to lose. Because when betrayal happens, all you lost was some money and a hookup or whatever. But I lost a piece of my soul. So we also have to be mindful of that. That's a manipulative tactic, when somebody is there for you, but also trying to flirt with you and sort of not having a clear boundary. Like, are you pursuing me, or are we friends? Is this an emotional connection? Are you my mentor? Let's set some boundaries around how we interact. And I had to be cautious of that, like, are you advising me, or do you want to date? Like, we gotta pick one, because if those lines are blurred, that's not a safe space. So if somebody is being there for you, but then expecting you to do something or give something in return, instead of just enjoying sort of mutual support, that's not a safe space. So those are 4 ways to identify it. But remember, trust is earned. You give it little by little, and the reward, that's what dating has to be, I'm learning. It is a test of what can you do with more and more trust. Like, I'm gonna give the blanket of trust to my person who I have fully committed to. We're in it, and what I believe is we're in a fully marriage commitment. That's what early friendships ought to be, I ain't gonna tell you all my business the first call, because you can't be trusted with that just yet. I'm going to tell you what I believe you can handle at this moment until you prove with action. And I'm gonna listen when you're talking about other people. I'm gonna listen how you talk about their business and the reverence that you do or don't have. I'll never forget, somebody came to me and literally told me what they knew about every preacher who I knew. And then I told this some stuff and was shocked when another friend of mine had heard it. And I only had myself to blame at that point. I was like, Princeton, you sat there and listened to them talk about, let me tell you about so-and-so. All right, it's not a safe space. And I will end with this. We have to be gracious towards ourselves when we get it wrong. And we have to know that two things: we reap what we sow. When people manipulate people and manipulate our souls and our emotions, people are going to reap that. And we might not see it. We might not be there. We don't even have to be the ones that bring up on that harvest, but certainly going to reap that. And then second of all, God repairs what we lose while we learn how to judge. God repairs, I really believe this, God repairs everything that we lose from a heart's perspective, from a soul's perspective, while we were hitting our heads to figure it out, because the wisdom is that valuable. And so trust in those two things.